Okay, students, for grade 7 at our school, Al-Qala'a and Al-Hijazya, we're going to be doing a new lesson today. It's adjective clauses. Uh, please pay attention, and we will try to get this done as easily and quickly as possible. Also, I didn't receive the homework for last Thursday. Please get it in. The page that we're studying today on adjective clauses is page 216. Language skills, adjective clauses. A clause is a group of words that includes a subject and a verb. An adjective clause is a dependent clause that modifies a noun or a pronoun or a noun phrase. In the example below, the adjective clause is underlined. The beam scale, example 1, the beam scales that early civilization developed accurately calculated weight. The adjective clause that early civilizations developed modifies the noun beam scales. Adjective clause often begins with a relative pronoun. As you can see, the relative pronouns are that, when, where, which, who, whom, and whose. An adjective clause can be essential or non-essential. An essential adjective clause contains necessary information. That's meaning it needed information. Essential adjective clause contains necessary information. If the clause is removed, the sentence won't fully make sense. In the example above, the adjective clause is essential because it tells which beam scales are being discussed. To indicate that it is essential, the clause is not set off with a comma. It's not set off with a comma. If it was set off with a comma, it would be something different. So now let's go to a non-essential adjective clause. Non-essential adjective clause gives additional information about the noun or noun phrase that it modifies, but the clause is not essential to conveying the sentence meaning. Non-essential adjective clauses are always set off from the rest of the sentence with a comma. So if you see an adjective clause separated from the sentence with a comma, then you know it's non-essential. Non-essential means it's not needed. Example, farmers in the Middle East who were producing a variety of crops needed ways to measure land and keep track of the growing season. The underlined adjective clause modifies the noun farmers in the Middle East, while the clause gives additional information about the farmers. It is not essential to the sentence meaning. In fact, if you remove the clause, the meaning of the sentence would remain the same. Because it is not essential, the clause is set off with commas. Example, let me read it without the adjective clause. Farmers in the Middle East needed ways to measure land and keep track of the growing season. That sentence is fine without the adjective clause. So you can tell with the comma after Middle East, In the comma after crops, you understand that this is not needed in the in the sentence to make the sentence uh, still have a meaning. In the first sentence, where it's essential, the beam scales. You see no comma, so that means it's an adjective clause that's essential, that is needed. The beam scales that early civilizations developed accurately calculated weight. Now, if we remove the early civilization developed, the sentence won't make sense. The beam scales accurately calculated weight. It doesn't make sense because it's not telling us about what beam scales. Okay, it's not telling us about the beam scales. This is telling us it's from the Middle East. Okay, so this is the lesson for today. Know that if an adjective clause is set off by commas, it's non-essential, it's not needed. If an adjective clause doesn't have commas, it's essential, it's needed. Adjective clauses often begins with a relative pronoun: that, when, where, which, who, whom, and whose. So if you see this in the sentence, in most cases, you know that the adjective clause is starting there. Adjective clause often begins with the relative pronoun. All right, thank you. And I'll read the next page, page 217. That will be your homework. Okay, here's page 217. 217 is the homework for today, Sunday. Please have it in by tomorrow, and then we'll start a new lesson tomorrow. Here, it says, read the following sentence. The Babylonian astronomers, Beros, is the scientist who created the 24-hour system of time. Enter the adjective clause. And that is the adjective. Tell me, is it essential or non-essential? What does the adjective clause modify? And read, and what does it modify? Okay. Now look there. You'll see a relative pronoun. The relative pronoun is in this sentence is who. So now you know it's not set off with a comma, so you know that it's essential. And it's describing what? It's describing who, and this is how you do this. Number one. Read the following sentence for number two. Can you imagine where there was no? Can you imagine at a time when there was no standard system of measurement? Okay. Enter the adjective clause. Is the adjective clause essential or non-essential? What does the adjective clause modify? Same principle goes for these answers also. Look at the sentence. You'll see the relative pronoun when. So it starts at when. Is it relative or non-relative? I mean, is it essential or non-essential? Do you see a comma? No. So if you see a comma, you know that is what? Essential. Let's go to number three. Read the following sentence. Ancient people who had no standard system of measurement often used their hand or feet to measure things. You see the comma at before, after people, and after measurement. So now you know that this is non-essential because with a comma, it's non-essential, it's not needed. Enter the adjective clause. Look for the relative pronoun. You see it, who, right? What does the adjective modify? Like this. In sentence number 4, write about the information in the ancient Middle East that you found most surprising. At least 2 adjective clause. Write about the information in the Middle East that you found most surprising. Use at least 2 adjective clause. So you know we're on the Middle East. We read the story. If you need to reread it, and continue on with the homework. All right, thank you, fellas. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Get your homework done. If you have any questions, just give me a call. Okay? Thank you very much and have a good day. All right. Assalamu alaikum.